Web pages today are displayed and experienced differently depending on many criteria. The kind of device and screen affect both how to display and what to display. Web pages are often designed to accommodate different users with different abilities and disabilities. Users experience web pages differently. Some users are colorblind, some can't see well, and some have a hard time clicking on small links. Users may see web pages on computer monitors, but today, many users are viewing the web on mobile devices like smartphones and tablets. Web pages may even be displayed on huge screens. Web designers must take users and devices into account when creating web pages. Even as you learn the basics of web page creation and design, you can and should keep some things in mind when you create a web page, working to make web pages accessible. You'll do this by removing barriers and to help make your web pages accessible to everyone. Some people have trouble seeing certain colors, some can't see at all, and some have a hard time manipulating a mouse. Users with poor eyesight may use screen readers to help view and experience a web page. Some colors and some fonts are easier to read than others. Some alphabets require special fonts to display well. If you develop more web pages, you'll want to ensure a good user experience, and this means that pages should load quickly when that's possible. We've already used HTML, or hypertext markup language, to create web pages that anyone in the world can see. HTML specifies the content of a document, the words and images that appear in a web page. Some formatting is specified with HTML. For example, different size headers are indicated in HTML by H1 or H2 or H3 tags. Different kinds of lists are indicated in HTML by using OL and UL tags for ordered and unordered lists. These display differently because browsers interpret the HTML and change both headers and lists to match the HTML markup. Tables are also formatted using HTML, as you've seen, with the many tags that are used to build a table for displaying data and other information. Images are displayed using HTML, and you've seen that the width of an HTML image, or IMG tag, can be specified using the width attribute or specifying the width using a style addition to the HTML tag. These style and width modifications are an example of what's called CSS to style a web page. CSS is an abbreviation or an acronym for Cascading Style Sheets. CSS specifies the look and formatting of a web page, whereas HTML specifies the content. This allows web designers to separate the content from how it's presented, which can accommodate the different users and different display devices to make sure that even in other countries, these can be displayed without changing the content of the web page. For example, how big is an H1 header tag? What color should be used for the text in an H1 header tag? Should the color or size depend on the user and how the user is experiencing the web page? On whether the user is using a mobile device? These attributes of a tag can be specified and changed using CSS. If you're creating thousands of web pages for a website, changing the color or font or the size of an HTML element can be localized in one place, rather than repeated in 1,000 places, which would make changes difficult. Design for scale is a key part of computer science, and one that CSS and HTML together make possible. To help understand what CSS can do and how it's used, we'll use a web page for some capital cities of the world that we've created. We have shown 4 capital cities in the web page whose URL is http://dt-capitals. We'll often use bit.ly shortened URLs for providing access to web-based resources we're creating for you to use in this course. We will have an image of each of 4 capitals, and we'll have to specify the size of each image. As you can see in the displayed web page, there's a list of 4 capital cities and 4 photos for the capitals. If you look at this page on a mobile device, it will look slightly different because the screen is smaller. We will look more closely at the HTML and CSS that create this web page. We'll look at the HTML used to create each of the 4 images that are shown on the web page for capital cities. There is an image, or IMG tag, for each photo shown. The source, or SRC attribute for the image tag, specifies the URL for the photo that will be displayed in the web page we've created. The source attribute is required. The width attribute is optional, but we'll need it because the photos we've chosen each has a different width. The source and width attributes together specify what photo is displayed and how wide the photo is on the web page. We want each photo to have the same displayed width of 100 pixels, even though the original photos may have different width. The width attribute makes this possible. We will use CSS to make changes easier and to help develop web pages using best practices in which content and presentation of the content are separated when that's possible. The images shown are all the same displayed width, but we may need to change the 100 pixel width to another value. For example, the width on a mobile device may be different than the width on a desktop device. The displayed photos are not aligned, and for better presentation, we'd like to align the tops of each photo. Using CSS allows us to localize these changes rather than having them appear in each IMG tag. We will use a style section in our HTML document to specify CSS. You'll learn the basics, and you'll be able to study more. There's a lot to learn, but these basics are a good starting point on your way to becoming more expert at using HTML and CSS together. We have created a new web page with a slightly different URL to illustrate a taste of CSS and why it's useful. As you can see in this web page, the images are aligned at the tops. If you explore the HTML and CSS, you'll see more details on how this is done. A style section specifies the CSS for the web page. The style section appears nested inside the head tags of the HTML page. As a reminder, the head comes before the body of the web page. The CSS in the style section consists of a tag name, open and closed braces, and the styling for the tag name that is between the braces. For example, one of the tag names is image, or IMG. Another tag name is TD for each table element that appears in the table. The styling for each tag is specified inside the curly braces for the tag. We've shown how to make the width 125 pixels for each image and how to vertically align the tops of each photo shown. As we explore more of CSS and HTML, you'll learn how to create web pages using established best practices.